We're going to start with our second speaker today. He is Dr. Ahmed Sindi. He is currently the CEO of Dawiyat, which is located in Saudi Arabia. He is an expert in startups and large teleco enterprise management, and he is also the chairman for Global Data Hub. He will be speaking about cybersecurity within smart cities. Let's all welcome Dr. Ahmed Sindi.
السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. بسم الله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله. أول شيء, I thank Samir and the organizers for giving me about a slot for an hour to speak. No, Samir says it's only 15 minutes. Alhamdulillah. Okay. Here today, I see a lot of cybersecurity professionals. I am not here to tell you how to solve your problems. Actually, exactly on the contrary. I'm here to tell you that your job is going to get 100 times more difficult, more complex, more challenging, more interesting. Now, actually, this is great news. This is not bad news, because if the problem was trivial, then you wouldn't have jobs. I'm telling you, the problem is not only complex, it is getting more complex, and this is great news because you have training opportunities, you have growth opportunities, you have commercial opportunities, you have all kinds of opportunities to develop solutions, to develop yourselves. So this is my message for you today. I'm not here to tell you how to secure your system. I'm here to tell you to think of ways where your job is actually getting a whole lot more complex. So, what's new these days? There are a whole bunch of new buzzwords, but today's buzzwords is IoT, the Internet of Things. This is the new revolution. Is it a revolution? Well, just let's look at a few aspects of it. Well, first of all, the number of sensors are growing at a crazy rate. Some argue it's more than 33% per year. It's not only the devices and the number of devices is growing exponentially, but also the bandwidth to connect these devices is getting cheaper and cheaper, which means they're fueling that these devices are going to be more and more, and they're going to be connected to the grid, to the systems, to your network. These devices are getting cheaper and cheaper. You know, before we were talking about like a sensor of $10. Now maybe we're talking about a sensor for about 30 cents or less. These devices are getting into easily accessible equipment, and also the price of storage is just falling to the ground. Like these devices, we're talking about 7 billion devices in 2019. I think also the growth here is going to be also exponential. Some say it's going to go to 21 billion in 2025, possibly more. Like a bit about connectivity. Now, 3 billion people, remember, let's compare and contrast. Before we were getting absolutely excited when we say, oh, there's like 1 billion person using mobile networks. That completely is pale when you compare to 21 billion devices that are going to be connected to the grid. Now that's one hell of a challenge. It's quantum leap, if you will. Like compound this with 5G that is giving you the promise to do surgeries, to over the phone, to assemble devices in factories and so on and so forth. So the challenge is getting a whole lot more pervasive. Now, Saudi Arabia, I am absolutely, it couldn't be more fortuitous for me to live in Saudi Arabia these days. With the vision 2030, the whole country is going and building smart cities. Urbanization is growing at an unprecedented rate of accumulated rate, more than 16%. You have amazing projects like NEOM, Gediya, and Sea, and initiatives of NIDLib, building Spark, Mudun. These are great projects. I remember the days when we talk about a smart city, it means when you have Wi-Fi. Wi-Fi now is the most trivial thing in smart cities. Smart cities now, you're talking about a whole bunch of completely different level of connectivity. This is where the city knows that you are Ahmed, and Ahmed, likes to have his cafe latte at 9 o'clock exactly, and at this temperature. This is the kind of knowledge that smart cities aspire to bring. So it is not having internet, it's having a whole different lifestyle management, if you will. You cannot bring about these smart cities unless you have a complete ecosystem of devices, networks, but above all, you're talking about public and private partnerships. The government brings its security system. The ministries and other services bring e-businesses, be it governmental or be it commercial. Utilities, they bring their smart meters and smart waste, and municipalities, they have their services on. So education, buildings, you're talking about a whole slew of systems that not only integrate, they integrate with you, the citizen, the user, as the point of interest. Like now, so where does cybersecurity play? I think most of you here in the room, when I ask you what is denial of service attack is, so who knows what's a denial of service attack? Maybe everyone. Okay. Before a denial of service attack, it means a whole bunch of bots or computers around the globe is attacking a site and trying to bring this site down. In smart city, the denial of service attack is actually a cyber-induced physical attack. So, for example, Dallas, instead of just bringing the site down, a hacker went into the sirens and he activated 156 sirens all at the same time, resulting in 4,400 calls to 911. So, this attacker, from a single source, attacking something completely benign, like the siren. I mean, who cares about securing the siren? Nobody cares about securing the siren. Maybe some people do. Now, a whole bunch of people are concerned about securing the siren. All of a sudden, the 9/11 service has been brought down in the city. Now, think about similar examples. Let's talk about the grid. I'm talking about the electricity grid. So, if an attacker can successfully tap into how a smart grid can isolate certain power stations, you can actually turn a whole city or a whole nation down and rob them out of power, thus rendering them prone to actually a military attack or a terrorist attack. Now, before, if you were a cybersecurity professional, you say, okay, no big deal. This is the utility grid. I completely have the whole internet cut away from the smart grid and let it run on its own. We cut all the users outside. Now that's easy. This is where your job has been easy. But if you do that with Internet of Things, if you do that with sensors, then people are going to die. People in operations, in city management, if you cut their access to the system, life in a city could actually cease to exist. So this is now, we're talking about the complexity. You cannot shut the system down. You cannot cut access to the system that the earlier generation of cybersecurity professionals was able to just seclude certain parts of the system. You cannot do that as easy as you were able to do before. You cannot do that anymore. Again, now, in regular world, the traffic cop just goes and turn up and down the traffic light. But in a connected world, in a smart city, the traffic light has a chip. This chip is connected to a center that monitors traffic patterns and monitors a traffic blockage. Now, if a hacker can control that, he can, again, you can bring the city down. And the examples go on and on and on. Right. Now, we just demonstrated that the cybersecurity today is a completely new, different ball game. Attacks are very sophisticated and take a very, very different nature. And the impact, not only a city, but a city, a bunch of city, a whole nation. And the examples are plenty. We all remember what happened to Sony. We even remember what happened to Facebook and the breach, where the effect has been felt around the globe. And the perpetrators have moved from being disgruntled employees to actually nations that try to subvert certain systems in other nations. So the stakes are getting a whole lot higher. Right. What elements should we start thinking about if we want to do our jobs a little bit better, and how smart cities can at least begin to address this issue? Well, you need identification. Identification of what? First of all, before you think cybersecurity, identify your asset. Here, which phones do you have? What monitors do you have? What systems do you have? I am talking to the least smallest bit. If you don't have a complete system that registers your asset, you're out. Okay. The second thing is, and obviously, registration, cybersecurity policy goes with that. What to do when something goes wrong. And then protection needs to be built in the design. It is not an afterthought. If you do not think of securing your system at the time of designing it and building it and talking about the interconnectivity, you have failed before you start. Third, detection. This is when SOCs and NOCs come. This is where you have some of the other traditional tools that you have, where you put sniffers, where you put devices on pipes, so you see if there are anomalies, and you have correlators, and you link with international agencies that have sniffers all over the globe to identify threats that you have not seen and how to respond to them. And then you go to the fourth level, how to respond to an emergency, how to isolate certain systems. But more importantly, the last step, okay, you've responded, you've isolated. Now the real work comes, how to recover and how to prevent. So if you do not master all of these 5 points, and the smart city does not address all of these 5 issues, it will be very vulnerable. Right. Now, from the Dawiyat's perspective, what have we done? Well, we're looking at 2 different things. We're looking at fiber because we have implemented close to 500,000 fiber to home. In this aspect, because we are selling to other service providers, we are more worried about the physical security, i.e., we have our very capable contractors have implemented alarms so that when a box is opened, then you get an alarm. If somebody is trying to have a split in your fiber, then you get an alarm. So it is more towards the physical security, and then the telco partners worry about the logical security. But when you talk about the other aspect, and we are concluding our IoT license, we're talking about a whole different ball game, whereby the complexity is on a whole different level. It is shared between the virtual operator, it is shared with the network operator, it is shared with the device manager and the device user. So very different aspects of cyber security. To conclude, again, we have heard Samer say it's an ecosystem. You cannot have a successful cyber strategy unless you think about the 360 degrees. You think about the vendor, you think about the service provider, you think about the urban planner, you think about the user, and you think about the government agencies. All of these aspects need to be fully integrated in a seamless way. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. It has been an honor to address you. Assalamu alaikum. ماشي. Oh, okay. This does not count in the 15 minutes. شكرا. سلمك الله. شكرا الله يسلمك. طيب, any questions before I?
Do you guys have any questions for Dr. Ahmed? Okay, we'll take one. Mike.
Internet of Things application, they've actually started just to keep the discussion local. I'm sure that many of you have seen in WhatsApp Adres having started selling these chips that you put in your gasoline, so you can pay for gas and you know when gas is over. Now, this is one example, but I'm thinking maybe middle of next year where you see this example, instead of seeing one example, you'll see maybe 1,000 examples. So it is coming very soon, but the pickup is a little bit slow. But when 5G comes, you'll see this number just maybe multiply by thousands. So it is pretty much upon us. Thank you.
Oh, I'm appreciating so much what you have mentioned about the cybersecurity for the power system network. But I don't want the public people to understand that if we'll install or fix some sensors in the power plant, it will protect the power grid from any fault. No, the power grid is distributed all over the kingdom. And we are facing many problems like traffic cars. Traffic cars can cut the electricity from any city. So, yes, you can, some sensors can sense the fault and isolate that area, but it will never deter or will never stop any accident. So this item, I think the public people should know, because sometimes some people are complaining, why the electricity has been cut off? Okay, because some traffic accident has happened in the highway and many towers has been crashed, or the sandstorms, or many. I don't want to go more. You understand me? So you have mentioned to this point that if we will install some sensors in the power plants, we can stop, you can say, the destruction. No?
Actually, this is not what's being said. What's being said is a comparison and contrast. The power grid in Saudi Arabia.
Okay.
I would say if it is not the most secured asset, then I don't know of any asset that is more secure than the power grid. So this is one. The second thing is, okay, I agree that part of the smart grid sophistication is, and these systems are pretty much already in place. So let's say if my son puts a jackhammer into the 220 volt, okay, then the house is going to be shut, maybe the neighborhood, and the grid already has like 2 to 3 feeders, and 9 times out of 10, if one feeder shuts down, then the second feeder is going to take the traffic. So this is not the worry. So this is the command and control of the electricity grid, and this is more or less is working in more or less flawless way. When you're talking about major lines being cut in between cities, it's a different story, and this has nothing to do with cybersecurity. This has an issue to do with physical security. And actually, we have seen examples in London and in US where such failures have happened. Alhamdulillah, we have not seen this happen in Saudi Arabia. يعني, please be rest assured that the grid of Saudi Arabia, it is, if not the most secure, it is amongst the assets that has the highest possible both physical and cyber security. Anything else?
Okay.
Thank you, Doctor, for the speech. My name is Ayad Al-Ayad. I'm from Kier International. And I have only one question. Now we are seeing companies and operators moving to 5G. Especially, my question about the companies that can implement this technology in the kingdom. Are we expecting less or more use of the fiber cables in the kingdom, and how is this related to the 5G when it comes to the nation?
Okay, great. I think this is an excellent question. 5G is not here to replace fiber. Actually, the doctrine of 5G, it says that the cell size is going to get a whole lot smaller. Like when the cell size gets a whole lot smaller, then okay, this is access. Then what's gonna be the backhaul? So the traffic that this cell is attracting from the users, and each one is promised up to 1 gig speed connectivity. Now, how are you gonna hold back this traffic? Now, the only viable mechanism is fiber. Yes, of course, you could do wireless, but the reliability and the cost. Now, with fiber in almost everywhere in Saudi Arabia, thanks to المبادرة الوطنية للنطاق العريض that where the government and MCIT is actually putting money to service providers to increase the penetration of fiber to home. Now, with this such amazing opportunities with fiber being brought easier and closer to the neighborhood, then the fiber networks is going to be literally the backbone to support 5G rollout and to reduce the cost of 5G rollout, because then you have single fibers where operators can share. So not every operator needs to dig 2 to 3 times, where you have national infrastructure that can be used once, twice, 3, 4 times for the same purpose. This is also where possibly you can serve with the same fiber 2, 3, 4, 5 base stations, if you will, that offer 5G in neighborhoods. So 5G actually then fiber to home and other fiber services will operate as the backhaul and an enabler for 5G. So the two technologies actually are going to work hand in hand. We're not talking about replacement, but we're talking about assistance, if you will. So this is my take on this. Okay, طيب, gentlemen.
Pause for Dr. Ahmed.
Thank you.
Thank you
Salam
so
alaikum.
much, Dr. Ahmed.